My name is Benedict Jones, Sr. I was born in a fish camp 10 miles downriver from Koyukuk, August 3rd, 1933.
My name is Eliza Jones. I'm originally from Cutoff, that's the old village before Huslia. And then they relocated the village because it was always flooding there.
My great-grandfather, Louis Pilot, he was the chief of Cochrane. I got his name. It's Koyukuk is the name. That's what it means, gather the peoples together on the river. That's what my native name.
So to Cecilia Happy, she adopted my dad, and she gave me this name, Niltaloi Nilno. And the name, it could mean doing different projects at the same time, or having multiple talents. You know, Grandma gave me that name so that it could carry on her story, but also as a way of passing on her talents to me. She was a beautiful seamstress. She did a lot of beadwork. Everything she did really good.
My parents and I went up to Andrew Paul Slough Spring Camp, make cache about 8 feet off the ground and put tent up and made raft. My dad, he said there was 6 feet of snow, going to be a flood. We stayed there till after the ice went out. We paddled down here to the village, and I remember there were some buildings that was crushed by the ice. So everybody cleaned up all the buildings, and some people the ones that lost their houses, they had to live in a tent for the summer. They cut logs, they dry it all summer. Everybody, all the men and boys, helped the family build a cabin in the fall.
When people got together in Cutoff, one of the activities that people did was what they played kickball. So you'd have stakes on both sides, and there was a goalkeeper. And everybody played. But I remember Uncle Sammy, he loved dancing. He was a lively person. And somebody just said, "Big dance tonight." And then Uncle Sammy would take all the furniture out of his house, and there was a dance in his house.
One summer, black bear swimming across the river. My brother, he shot it in the stomach. The bear was saying, "Ouch, ouch, ouch," in our native language. "Abba, abba, abba." We speak in our language. The animals, they understand us. The dogs, they understand our culture of life and everything. In the early days, that's our only transportation. One year, we stay in a winter camp, trapping beaver or muskrat. We were having breakfast and the dogs start howling, sad howl, like they were crying. So Dad went out and told them to shut up, but they wouldn't. So he come back in. We had radio, KFAR, news flash, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. That's what the dogs knew it, that was something was going on. They let us know their sad howl.
Villages were so isolated. When somebody came from out of town, like a boat coming up and barge coming up in the spring, people would get sick. People from outside, they're the ones who brought the TB in. And other illnesses too, because I remember there was a measles epidemic. Lots of people died in just a few years. My dad died. I guess maybe I just blocked it out or what, but I don't remember his funeral or anything about him. My dad was just gone. And all my family members were sick. I wasn't sick, and Atla wasn't sick. He was the baby. And my mom would wake up and say, "Take care of your brother." And it was kind of fun for a while, taking care of him. I was in charge. And I remember after a while, he would be crawling around and eating stuff he shouldn't be eating, but I just let him go. It's just Then later on, my mom remarried, and we didn't have school in our village. And the government said, we're not gonna put school in cutoff because it's flooding every year. And if you want us to have school in your village, you need to move your village.
The war started, and U.S. Air Force wanted to put an air base. First they came down to, they call it West Ruby, on the hillside. But they found out there was too much permafrost. So they took all their equipment on the steamboat, shipped it back to Galena. And there was source of gravel on the beach, that's why they put the base there. They hired all the native people from the surrounding village, Nolado, here, Caltech, Galena, Ruby. So my parents and I, we stayed there. They work all summer long, clear the brush by. There was no chainsaw those days, so all the laborers had to cut the trees down by hand, two-man saw. Then the bulldozers cleared it. My dad was the oiler, serviced all the equipment, grease monkey, they call him grease monkey. And the people signed up for being a territorial guard. The army donated their rifle and ammunition. After the war, my dad was going back up outboard motor. They had a mishap and he drowned it. There was no welfare or nothing those days. So Mom and I had to scrounge around to make a living, you know.
The Huntingtons, Jimmy and Sydney, were real instrumental in relocating the village to where it's at right now. Jimmy had a trading post, and so one of the ways he got the people to move was to move his store to the new site, and then other people moved with him. Okay, so the government said, if you wanted to put a school there, we need a building. So all the men went out, cut house logs, no money from the government. They built this building, and that's the school. They built it. And then they told the government, okay, we got a building, send us a teacher. So we got our first teacher. And everybody was in the first grade because nobody's been in school before. And all these teenage boys, they had a hard time. They never sat down for like 6 hours a day doing work. They're active people. And so the girls did really good because traditionally our job is to work in the house and, you know, doing sewing and stuff like that. But I loved the school. And I loved to read and I loved math and all that stuff. I went up to 4th grade the first year because he let us work at our own pace. And then the second year was 4th and 5th. The third year I went up to 7th. And then the next year I couldn't go to school because I was 16. So that's my total school education.
My mom was a hard worker. Every day we had to get something to meal for the night. Catch rabbits in the snares, or shoot spruce hen or woolly grouse. We'd put fishnet under the ice. Mom and I, we caught about 1,000 whitefish. We just pile it on the ice and freeze it. Whatever we need to go up there with dog team and pick it up. BIA had a school here. They couldn't get hire no teachers because of the war. Benedict talked with the territorial legislature to restart the school here again. 4th grade, that's the highest I went. And then steamboat came down, steamer Nenana, delivering freight from all the villages from Nenana down to Holy Cross. So this friend of mine, he said, let's ask for a job. So we asked the first mate, and he hired us right there. Day cans. So every item that had to be manhandled, whether it's gas or whatever. 12 hours a day we had to work. And we get paid once a month, $10. I really enjoyed working on a boat. I mean, made a lot of friends between all the villages. I went to work on the railroad. And then they were starting to mine at Hog River. And that's how I learned how to build the roads with the dozer. And then I met Eliza Peters. Well, her and her friends started writing a letter to me.
So that's how we met. Later he sent for me he was working up here, Fairbanks.
Her friends in Huslia asked them to marry me. So she proposed to me by letter. So I paid her fare, Huslia, mail flight, and she didn't show up. So I was kind of disappointed. I didn't know what to do. Next week, when I got off work, I went upstairs and opened the door, could throw my jacket on the couch, and her foot was sticking out. She came.
And later Benedict and I got married and moved to Koyukuk.
Father Plamondan was the one married us, Catholic priest. No snow machine those days, so everybody came by dog team. We had the reception at the hall. They were playing fiddle music, you know. There was people from Caltech, Nolata, Galena, and here, all people. We had good dance.
A doctor used to come to Koyukuk once in a while, a doctor and a nurse, and they were saying, we need health aid. So I volunteered, and I was pregnant, of course, and they said, we could send you to Tanana. We'll teach you how to be a health aide. So I said, okay. And I was there for about 4 days. And then I went into labor and had my baby, and they just barely started teaching me. The nurses are busy, and they were telling me all about these medicines. And then they said, okay, now you have to give shot to a real person. I was so nervous and I was so tired. Heck, I just had a baby. And I gave her the shot and I was just so shaky. I said, I'm a patient, I gotta go back to bed. So then I stayed a few days longer, and then I went back to Koyukuk, and they sent me home with all these medicines. And they taught me how to talk on the radio to the doctors. And I would describe patients' symptoms, and he would tell me what to do for the patient. But if he can't hear me, but somebody in other villages heard me, they could repeat the medical traffic to the doctor in Tanna. One of the problems was people that are in camp can tune in. They want to know who is sick. I remember one time this elder man came out of his house and he said, oh, where you going? I said, I got to talk to the doctor. I'm on the way up. And then he started telling me his symptoms in the Naga, all in native. No, so, okay, that's not, you know, I understand what he was telling me. And I said, gee, I could tell the doctor, but I don't know how to say that in English. He said, oh, just tell him I hurt my balls. And the doctor said, sounds like he's got a hernia. And then I got embarrassed. He said, send him to Tanna, and later on he went up and had surgery. I was health aide for about maybe 10 years, and I treated a lot of people.
Those days when we started running dogs in October, they run every day, all winter long, hauling wood or whatever, so they were tough. After all trapping, everybody get together. People from Huslia, Caltech, Galena, Ruby, all came here to race. Late Jimmy Malamute came. He won the North American Championship in Fairbanks that year. My late friend, James Shattle. We started talking, he said, get in the race. He said, I got good dogs too, but yours are a lot faster, he said. So we made the trail around the island down here and come back across the river by snowshoes. We snowshoe. Then we start training on that trail. I had to build a race sleigh. The harness were good, but the toe line and neckline were old. And then race started. People were on the bank watching. We ran away from the other mushers. They were just galloping. And Jimmy Malamute, North American champion, I caught him up over here again. But Down here at the village, there's banks, kind of sharp curve there. Wheel dog that's next to the sleigh broke his neckline, got out of the harness. I tipped the sleigh over, I hooked up the dog back in the harness. He took off. I know I did good, but they never tell us time. That evening they announced, and he beat me by 2 seconds. If I didn't stop, I would have beat him. He come up to me after that, he said, "You young punk," he said, "I barely beat you by 2 seconds." Tell me. But that was my first race.
This family came to Koyukuk on a raft, white family. There was David Henry, his wife Kay, and I think they had 4 children. Their job was to translate the Bible to people's native language. And everybody in the village just went down there, grabbed everything, and brought the stuff up to their house where they're going to be staying. So cool. People just helped. Our language was not written at the time. And the words were long. Like, take care of yourself is aroinegaledinik. And so he would write this long word, or maybe I repeat the words about 10 times and eventually something would come out. And he said, "I think you should learn how to write this language." And I said, "No, I can't do that. It's too hard. I don't know anything about writing our native language." And so that's where I started working with our language.
Me, Paddy and Honor, we were the chief. He was chief for Galena and I was chief for here. We went to Tanana. That's where they had the first Tanana chief meeting. First thing brought up on the agenda was native land claim settlement. We talk about that. And then the Corps of Engineers, they wanted to build a rampart dam, but I opposed that. The guy from Fort Yukon, he opposed it. I wrote to Bob Bartlett and Senator Greening, so they accept my proposal, so they turn it down. Corps of Engineers turn it down.
The state passed a law that the schools should be teaching languages. You heard of Molly Hood's case? So David Henry got a grant. He would invite different people to come and participate, and he invited Dr. Krause to our class. And Dr. Michael Krause had just founded Alaska Native Language Center. And so he was telling us about all these Athabaskan languages. And my thought was, wow, I want to work with that guy.
I went to Fairbanks for Winter Carnival. But late Ralph Perdue, he was running a Tanana chief, and he knew the district engineer for the highway in Fairbanks. He said, "Let me go ask that guy if you want a job with him." They accepted my application. So I work on East Highway, rebuilding the roads. So I found a trailer to rent and then relocate my family to Fairbanks.
Next thing I know, I was working there, Alaska Native Language Center. My first plan was to do a dictionary. And so I worked with lots of elders from all the different villages. There was a priest that lived in our area in the early 1900s. His name was Father Jete. He lived in camps with people and became fluent in our language. He was a scholarly person. And so Dr. Krause found this box at Gonzaga from Father Jeté. There was a file for each of the sounds. And so I don't know how many years it took me to write the different sounds that we have in our language that don't exist in English. So the dictionary, the publisher is by Father Jules Jeté and Eliza Jones.
So I worked maintenance, running all equipment, wintertime snow plowing, and Woody Johansson called me to the office. He said, we need a supervisor. We got a contract with the villages to build roads and repair the airports and stuff like that. And I told him, okay. I had 100 men working for me that summer. So every day I was traveling from Eagle all the way to Caltech, go to Arctic Village, go to Alakakit, teach the guys how to operate trucks, dozer and loader. So every week I turn in their time into the office in Fairbanks. In 1990, they had a retirement party for me. So the day after the party was over, I moved back down before breakup. I started raising pup. Yeah, that's how I started racing again.
And we had 9 children altogether. My children are all Catholics. And to this day, I work in the church at Koyukuk.
I try to advise the young guys to get a high school diploma and take a vocational school if possible.
You have tragedies in your life. You need to fall back on something and fall back on your native ways or fall back to the church. Church is so important. Our word for God is Denahata, our Father.
Way back, probably 1,000 years ago, the stories from one generation to generation, people, they migrated up from the Yukon. The raven was their leader. They went around the bluff. There's a sharp point up there. They put a log up there, seesaw on there, and raven picking on the log. The log broke, killed everybody. And he was sorry. He went down the beach. He said, we'll all recreate them to animals. So that's why they speak our Athabascan language. They understand our culture of life and everything. They understand everything.
You know, our native beliefs, I believe, is our religion. And to me, that's really important. Iko tleqahot ans ilat yaqad nadis naqadna tanais hayhakt it all huzo. So yaqad tleqahot an inlat so deals. Be happy you're a native person. Uh-huh.